we're going to now go back into our culture side by side. Today, again, it's not side by side. We have one speaker, which allows us then to have an opportunity to hear his thoughts, and also then to, in our chat, write down the questions that you will have. We'll have about, again, 15 minutes of question answer time at the end of Dr. Henrik Dirksen's interaction with us. So if you would like to ask him a question, please start putting those questions in the chat as the time goes on, and we'll try to answer as many questions as possible. Professor Dr. Heinrich Dirksen has been on the faculty at Bonn Biblical Seminary since 1999 and is a lecturer in practical theology, Greek and New Testament exegesis. He's also a teacher as an assistant professor at Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary in Fort Worth, Texas. He is, among other things, a member of the main board of the Evangelical Alliance of Germany, the Federation of Evangelical Free Churches, as well as a vice chairman of the Conference of Bible-Believing Training Institutes and head of the Forum of Evangelical Free Churches. Heinrich lives with his family in Cologne and is married and has 5 children. Heinrich, we leave this time up to you.
Hello, I hope you can hear me, and it's a great joy for me to participate at this meeting. I will have some slides for you, so I will try to show you them now. Let's see if it works. Okay, here we go. Well, let me give you a short introduction to the history and spiritual development of Germans from Russia. This is a very unusual group of people. People are always asking me, who are you? Are you Germans or are you Russians? So the understanding is we are Germans from Russia. I have a personal, let me share you a little bit about my personal way from Russia to Germany. So I was born in Russia, in the Ural Mountain. I was born there, and my parents moved when I was 6 months old to Kyrgyzstan. So that's where I grew up for my first 6 years. When I turned 6, my parents moved to Germany, to their home country, back to Germany. To understand why Germans would live in Russia, I will give you a short historical background in a few minutes. But for sure, this background has influenced my life. I always live in 2 different cultures. I have a Russian-German background. That means I brought with me, or my family brought with them, their backgrounds, their culture, their history, their traditions, and so on. But coming to Germany, we realized quickly that this is a different world. Also, we are Germans, and we always spoke German at home. We didn't speak the same German language because over 250 years in Russia, the German language in Germany has changed. So we had to realize we had to relearn the German language. We realized that our German blood was different than a typical German society. So we did have to understand the culture is different. We always thought we have a German culture because we lived as Germans in Russia, and we were persecuted in Russia because we were Germans, especially after the Second World War. And now coming to Germany, we realized, wow, we are not Germans at all. We have a different background. So we are immigrants, but having a German culture. So this is my personal background, and that's how I grew up, and that's how we started to build churches here in Germany. Let me give you some facts in an overview. We have today about 2.5 million Russian Germans, so-called Russian Germans, who immigrated to Germany in the last about 40 years. The majority of the Russian Germans are not free churches oriented. I will show you later on the different groups to which churches they belong. The free churches have the strongest spiritual formation in Germany. For example, the Protestants or the Catholic Russian Germans are not so connected to the church, and sometimes or mostly not that much strong spiritual, have not that strong spiritual formation. And so we started to build our own churches here in Germany. Today we have over 1,000 free churches, which were planted in the last 40 years. About 700 of these 1,000 free churches have a Baptist Mennonite tradition. So let me say an Anabaptist background. About 250 have a charismatic Pentecostal background, and over 100 churches have an evangelical brethren tradition. So in attendance on Sunday morning, the number is, not an exact number, but we have about 300,000 church attenders every Sunday. Some people say we have more than 500,000, but again, the numbers are not exactly clear. Because some churches, they just don't count how many people attend on Sunday morning. But the largest churches in Germany have about 3,000 people on Sunday morning in attendance. And so there are big churches, and for sure there are smaller churches with less numbers. If we would count all churches together, we are the largest free church in Germany, but we are divided in at least 12 different conventions. And 50% of all churches are autonomous and self-sufficient, so they are self-supported and do not have any relationship to another convention. So this makes it very difficult to bring all these churches under one umbrella. We have a very typical character for our church service. During the church service, you usually have 2 to 3 sermons which are preached, and especially we have sometimes a special sermon for children in service, because all the children are with us on Sunday morning in attendance. So they do not go to their children's Sunday service, but they sit together with all other people in the church, and therefore they get a special children's sermon during the service. Sometimes you even can see the style of building. If you drive through our country here in Germany, you can tell that's a Russian-German church building by the character or the style of building, Especially if you look closer, you will see the word house of prayer, Bethaus. And that tells you this is a typical Russian-German church here in Germany. This is a short statistic from scientists who tell us we have different migrant environments here in Germany, and you always have to find to which group does this migrant group belong. So, and then you can have a better understanding for them. There's especially an interdependence between religion, culture, and integration. It depends a lot how much a group is, how to say this, in how much they are integrated in a society. It depends on their religion and culture and their background. Well, we did have different waves from Germany to Russia, especially in the 18th and 19th century. There were political reasons why people moved to Russia. There were economic reasons why people would move from Germany to Russia. Again, you're asking me, why do we have Germans in Russia? These are the reasons why Germans moved to Russia. Religious reasons were, at least in some areas, the reason why people moved to Russia, and personal reasons. They just, wanted to start over. There were family relationships why they would move to Russia, and so on. So there were big waves in the 18th and 19th century from Germany to Russia. Here on this map, you can see the different moves from which areas in Germany they moved to Russia. And when you see the red spots here in Russia, you can see where they were located. So it was not one group on one place. No, they came from different areas, from different religious background here in Germany, and they moved to different areas in Russia and settled there. And so they built their own communities there. They built their own churches there. They built their own hospitals, their own schools. Actually, the whole school system in Russia, which we can see today, was invented by the Germans. They started the school system in their own communities, and then the Russian society took over this system of schools into the whole in the whole country. So Germans in Russia influenced the society and even the politicians in Russia. And now I will show you. Okay, here you can see why people moved to Russia. The largest group was invited by Catherine the Great in 1763. She offered the Germans free transportation to Russia, the right to settle in separate communities, free land, and so on. You can see this, why people were attracted to move to Russia. I mean, again, I always ask myself, why would Germans want to move to Russia? But when you see these benefits, it did make sense for many people to move there and to live there a better life, for sure. They had a great life. My forefathers were pretty wealthy in Russia, but then, the Russians took everything away from them and they lost everything. So we came back to Germany as very poor people. We did have no more than 2 suitcases when we moved to Germany, nothing else, no money, But thanks to God and to the German government, they helped us to establish a new life here in Germany. But these were the reasons why we moved there. Main reasons why people return: political reasons, religious reasons. We were persecuted in Russia. So my father didn't went to prison, but almost. He had to go to prison. So it was a good everybody would understand why he would like to leave this country and to go back to his homeland. Social reasons, economical reasons, personal reasons. Here you can see when people moved back to Germany, and there were 3 waves, but the biggest wave was starting in 1987 until from 1987 to 2005. This was the biggest wave, and we had about 2 million people who moved during this time period to Germany. Religious background, here you can see it, 40% evangelical, which means more Protestant background. Maybe this is something you can understand better. 40% have a Protestant background, 30% have a Catholic background. The reason why we have more Protestant than Catholics was more Protestants moved to Russia than Catholics. Especially Russia didn't like the Catholics because they had still this fight between the Orthodox and the Catholic Church. So Catholic were not so invited in Russia. That's why more Protestants moved to Russia than Catholics. And then the Free Church or the Anabaptist background, they have only 20 to 25%, and then other non-religious and other people. The Russian German Free Churches form an ethno-religious community with the mainstream society here in Germany. Many people ask us, why don't you just go into typical German Baptist or Mennonite churches? And the reason is we have a common history and we have a common culture. So we have common traditions, we have common values, we have a language. Not everybody does understand the Russian German language, especially because of some expressions that we used in Russia. And so we have our own literature because of our background and our history. And we have different influences in our church. It's very interesting to see. We have sometimes Baptist churches and Mennonite churches who are original, not the same spiritual and sometimes even a traditional or a historical background. But if you come to a Baptist church or you go to a Mennonite church, you don't see differences, because in Russia, they had different influences and they started their churches with same traditions. For example, we have an influence from the Reformation. There is a lot in our church history and in our church service, where the influence comes from the Reformation. Then we have for sure an Anabaptist influence. We have a pietistic influence. Pietists came to Russia and reached to the German society there, and they brought them back to faith. And so this pietistic influence was big in Baptist churches, in Mennonite churches, and in different other evangelical groups. And we have even a little bit of Russian Orthodox influence, which is very limited, you know. And there are big discussions how much and how big this influence is, but I would say there is a little bit of this influence from the Russian Orthodox Church. Oh, sorry, this is still in German. So I will stop here by sharing this with you, by finalizing my talk. A lot of people are asking, why would we not just mix our churches with others? And as I mentioned before, culture and tradition can be lived within context of the community. You know, there are still differences in culture and tradition. The church service offers the necessary social bond and security of action. Russian Germans feel home in their own churches and their settings, because they know the tradition, they know how the church service flows, and so on. They have a mutual exchange of experience and can share their values. And sociological homogeneity is a stabilization factor in finding their own identity. I think this is important for us, to have our own identity. And in this plural church environment here in Germany, I think that our churches have a special benefit to the churches here in Germany. And so I hope that we enrich the pluralistic church body of evangelical churches here in Germany. All right, I have.
Thank you very much, Heinrich. We have a number of questions. I'm going to kind of take them out of order, I think, because there was one from Bert that a couple of people are quite interested in. So I think we'll start there. He's asking, I'm interested looking again at one of the slides that shows the level of integration, and would like to hear how this model was made and whether this model can be used for other migrant groups in Europe. And then right under that, Robert would like to know if you could share your PowerPoint.
Okay, let's see. Shall I start my PowerPoint again?
Yeah, perhaps, to see if you can find that slide. And
okay, here we go. Were we talking about this slide? Different.
One further back.
Möglich die Sirius-Milieus, Heinrich.
Oh, okay, here.
This one.
Yeah.
This one. Okay, and what was the question again?
Well, the question is, I mean, sorry, I can ask it directly.
Please.
Is okay. This seems to be a way of developing how integration takes place in several steps and several ways. And I wonder, is this a model that could work for other groups? And how have you come about? I mean, the various bits and pieces. Would it work for other communities or other cultures as well, you think?
Right. This is not typical for Russian Germans. This is typical for immigrants in Germany. It's from 2007. I'm sorry, it was just too difficult for me. I'm not so fluent in English, so it was too difficult for me to translate this all for you into English. I did my best just to show you a few of my slides, and I did not translate all, but it depends a little bit how strong is the religion, how strong is the culture, and it depends if the culture and the religion they bring with them is very strong, the integration process is more difficult. So that's what they want to show. If families hold together and they have a strong relationship as families, it's more difficult to integrate them in the culture. And the opposite is if they do not have a strong cultural background and not a strong connection to their religion, it's easier to integrate them in a different culture.
Does that answer your question, Bert?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, yeah. Anyway, good. Thank. Well, anyway, for now it's okay. Thanks.
Then I'll invite Frank Hinkelmann also to join the conversation. He'd like to make a comment.
Probably Reinhard wants to say similar thing. This what Heinrich is referring to is a research, sociological research taking place in general in many parts of Germany, of Europe, etc., so-called sinus milieu studies. And you can get that for regions, just to look at that, or at certain social groups, etc., etc. So it's a secular research which can be very helpful if you want to look at different issues of society. So if you put sinus milieu in Google, you will find that, Bert. So that can is probably also available for other European countries. I've just looked at it for the German-speaking countries. And sinus milieu.
And Frank, is it also available in English? I mean, it would be helpful to get it in English.
I don't know. We need to look at Google. I don't know.
Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you, Frank.
We have 4 minutes left. And so I'm going to take another, maybe 2 maximum questions. And then I would invite Heinrich to look through the chat. And if you could maybe answer the people, or in a breakout room, have a chat with Heinrich and get some of your questions answered. One of the questions that's been repeated a few times is, what is the impact now on a younger generation? So maybe the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th generation Russian Germans who are now, they've been established in Germany. Are they leaving the church? Are they leaving the Russian church? What's the impact?
I don't know what happened to my slides. Actually, I had the full English slide, but I don't know. I missed some slides, so I will send you the slides in English. But there was one slide where I tried to explain that we have right now 3 different streams in our Russian-German movement. One group is very exclusive. They do not collaborate. They even wouldn't talk to me. They would not invite me to preach in their church. They are so exclusive. They stay together and they do not allow others to connect with them. And there we have many young people who leave the church. They leave the church and go to other churches. Then we have, I call them a conservative group. They are conservative in tradition and values, but they are open for the main society. They do collaborate with other churches, but they stay with their culture and with their values. This is a group that really keeps the young generations in their churches. Not too many people leave this kind of church group. And then we have, an adopted group, or more a group that celebrates modern church services. Sometimes you would not see the difference between another evangelical church and these churches. And in these churches, we even have a growth of young people. For example, in my my own church in Cologne, we have now 40 different nations, and almost young. We baptize usually young people. We baptized last year 70 people. This year we have already baptized 30 people, and the church is grown, you know, and usually young people come to this church.
So I think we'll end on this last question, which has to do with what you're just saying. How does this group of churches, particularly, now there's three, you mentioned three streams of the church, but how do they see then their role in integrating other people, perhaps even from other cultures, into their church? You mentioned the importance of maintaining common culture, history, language, but do they feel a sense of responsibility to allow other migrants to come in, or German speakers and culturally German speakers to come in, or how does that look?
Yeah, again, different streams, different so the people are having different goals for their church, you know. So the conservative or the exclusive group is not really looking for other people. They are not inviting others to their group, so they stay exclusive, you know, and they do not reach out to many people. For sure, sometimes they will have few people from different other nations, or even we call them the German group, so with not a Russian German background. But the more the conservative or even the progressive group really reaches out to other nations, especially, see, the reason is we live still in two different cultures, you know, so we do understand other immigrants, and that's why these churches are focused on immigrants and other nationalities. So it depends really on the stream of the church, you know.
Heinrich, thank you so much for what you shared with us. Obviously, it was very focused on the Russian German church, but I think what you shared with us, we can all take then and put our different people groups within our own countries into that. We all have little Italy's, little Chinese, little Portuguese environments all over our countries, and then how to work love together in the body of Christ. So thank you for that. Thank you for your help. If you're willing to share your PowerPoint, then if you could just work that out with the technical team, and I'm sure many people, if you would like the PowerPoint, please talk to the technical team and ask specifically for Heinrich's PowerPoint if he's willing to make that available.